Thanks, Kathleen. Hi, everybody again. I hope you had a good holiday season and a Happy New Year celebration. I'm Kathy Hamilton, and I'm here. I'm really excited about this one, and because genealogy is something that I have always wanted to do, and I finally feel like I have the time, to go down those rabbit holes and stay down there for a while. And because I'm not retired, but I'm semi-retired now, work part-time for the library. So I'm just thrilled to introduce you to Melissa Fisher-Isaacs. She is LPL's Information Services Coordinator, and she is the guru of genealogy for us, and will actually provide you with one-on-one help if you need it in the future. But for now, she's here just to give us an overview of all the resources available to us, digital resources that is, on LPL's website. So without further ado, Melissa, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I see a few familiar faces here, so some of you have heard my spiel before. If you notice that I leave anything out, please don't hesitate to give me a shout out. But yeah, I think as Kathy mentioned, this is a really great activity to do this time of year. We're kind of at home a lot of the time anyway, and there are a lot of great digital resources that are available that you can use from home. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can kind of see where I'm going, and we'll take a look at do a little bit of sample searching, so you can kind of see what how these tools work and what kind of results will come up. So hang on with me here just for a moment. All right, can you all see my screen there?
Yes.
All right, so we're looking here at the library's homepage, and the place to find all of the resources I'm going to talk about. First, you'll go to our resources tab, and then there is a link for genealogy and local history. And this is a roundup of some different types of resources. Some of them are resources that the library subscribes to specifically. Some are resources that the State Library of Kansas subscribes to on our behalf. And then some are resources that are freely available on the web that we just think are useful. So we want to include them here so that they're easier for folks to find. I did want to mention something about the resources that the State Library provides. Most of these resources you will, if you click on our links here, they will log you in directly. They should recognize that your computer has a Kansas IP address. But if you do experience a hiccup, you can give us a call at the library here, and we can hook you up with a State Library e-card. It's really easy to do if you have a library card with LPL, and then you'll be able to log into the State Library's databases without any trouble. So just a little aside, I wanted to be sure to mention there. So the first resource I wanted to highlight is Ancestry Library Edition. This is actually a little bit of a weird moment for Ancestry Library Edition. Throughout the pandemic, they have been making remote access. So you've been able to access this from home. They just decided so at the end of 2021, they wrapped up allowing that remote access. But I was playing with it today, and I was still able to log into it without being hooked up to the library's Wi-Fi. So I think you might be able to sneak in a little bit of bootleg remote access right now if you hurry. Otherwise, this is a resource that you would need to be in the library to use. You can either be connected to our Wi-Fi, or you can use this in our computer lab. This is, of course, made by the folks who make Ancestry that you see all the TV commercials for. There is a lot of overlap between Ancestry Library Edition and the consumer edition that you see the commercials for. For the most part, the content is very similar. One of the main differences between Ancestry Library Edition and the consumer edition is that you don't have your own account in the Ancestry Library Edition version. You're just logging in and you're searching. And one of the things that I have heard from folks who do a lot of genealogy research is sometimes it's helpful that Ancestry Library Edition doesn't know who you are. It's not sending up those little green leaves that are giving you hints, but it's also, if you've gone down a wrong road somewhere, it's also not leading you further down that wrong path. So some folks who are experienced with genealogy kind of like to use the library edition as sort of a blank slate to check their work against a little bit. So basically, so I wanted to show you a couple of resources before we get started here. So up here in the ribbon at the top, there is a link to the Learning Center. And this is a really nice roundup of sort of tips and tricks for getting started with genealogy, or some of the little, extra challenging areas of genealogy. So if you're really just getting started and you're not sure what to do, or you're doing a specific type of research, you're researching a particular ethnicity, you're trying to deal with immigration in your research, there are some roundups of different ways to help you kind of find your way through those particular areas of genealogy research. So this is a really helpful area, just if you're not sure where to start or you've kind of gotten stuck a little bit. The other thing I wanted to note up here in the ribbon at the top is this charts and forms link. So these are links to PDFs of different types of forms that you can download and print them off. One thing with genealogy research is you'll so quickly find that there are all these tentacles of your family going out in every direction, and it can be really easy to forget what you've already researched, or you get stuck and you're like, okay, I'm gonna leave Uncle Bob aside, I'm gonna go to Uncle Jim now, and then you forget what you've done with Uncle Bob already. So a lot of these forms are intended to help you keep your research organized so that you're not kind of, tracing the same footsteps over and over again. So those are a couple of things I wanted to point out before we got started with the searching. So really the best thing to do with Ancestry Library Edition is just begin searching. There's this really handy green button here. And with Ancestry, you can see on the side here, there are all of these different record types that are represented in their collections. They are adding to their collections all the time. I guess one thing that I tell folks often is that everything hasn't been digitized yet, and everything that has been digitized isn't in Ancestry necessarily, but they are adding things all the time. So, if you are researching someone and you're kind of running up against a wall, sometimes it is helpful to just kind of set it aside and come back in a few months and see if there are any other resources that have been added for a particular person. But they do have, record types for, lots of different sort of points in a person's life. They also have records from across the United States and then even in other parts of the world. So there's just a wealth of resources available through Ancestry. When you're getting started with Ancestry, I really find the best thing to do is to just, start with some basics. If you choose the Show More Options button, you can add a lot of details about a person, but oftentimes it's best just to kind of start, with a name and maybe a place, maybe a date, and then kind of see what results you get and narrow down your search after you see what kind of search results you get. So I'm going to do a search for Rhoda Trask. And I know that she lived in Douglas County. So you see it kind of starts to auto-populate for me. One thing you can see also are these exact links here. And if I put in a year, you'll see one pops up here too. If you want to dial in how exact your search is, or if you want to dial in a range, you can use those use those boxes to do that. So I'm just going to go with these basics, a name and a place. And so then you see I come up with a list of results here. You can see through the filters on the side, the different types of records that are coming up and the record locations. So if I wanted to filter by one of these, I just want to look at, looking for only for birth records, something like that. I could narrow it like that. I can also use these sliders again to narrow or broaden my search terms. A lot of times with names, folks, their names might be spelled in different ways in different records. There may have been misspellings depending on who's transcribing the record. So sometimes it can be helpful to kind of toy with how specific your search is for your search term. So then you can also see the types of records that are coming up. It gives you a little bit of information so you can try to determine if this is the person that you're looking for. And this first result is, these dates look familiar to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this and see what comes up. So it gives you some details here, and then there is an image of the document itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and take a look. And so you can use these tools here on the side to zoom in. And this is actually the will of Rhoda Trask. Rhoda Trask was one of the first librarians in Lawrence. She was a Quantrill's Raid widow, and she never remarried. And in her will, you see that she leaves most of her worldly goods to her niece. It's very cool, I think. So I think this gives you kind of an example of the just sort of rich possibilities there are for records in Ancestry. If you do find something that you would like to keep a hold of, there is the save button up here in the upper right corner, and it gives you the option to either send this image home, which means emailing it to yourself, or you can save it to your computer. So if you were at the library, if you were on one of our computers, you'd need to have like a thumb drive or something to save it to, or if you're on your computer on our Wi-Fi, you could download it to your computer. But it will save that record and sort of the citation information, so you don't have to worry about losing that. So that's just sort of an example of the kind of record that you can find in Ancestry. Are there any questions so far about this resource?
I have one, and everybody, you can either at this point unmute yourself or just go ahead and put your question in the chat. But I'm just wondering, if Ancestry Library does sort of extend their pass, so to speak, so that people could use this from home during the duration of COVID, let's say, that would of course be great. But if they don't, is Ancestry.com much like this site? And does it require a paid subscription?
Yeah, so the Ancestry, the consumer version of Ancestry, the content is pretty similar. There are a few places where the consumer version of Ancestry has a little bit more content, but yes, to access it, you do have to pay a subscription fee, and there are sort of tiers. Like if you want to have access to like international records as well, things like that, then your subscription cost gets more depending on what kind of content you want access to.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Anybody else have a question before we move on? That is so cool about that librarian.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Gracie.
About the when we were looking at the document and there was the film strip of other images, is there a way to expand on that to show more images, or is it only that one film strip at the bottom?
Sure. So in this particular case, this is sort of, the film strip is like thumbing through the book that this is in. So if you wanted to kind of digitally turn the pages, you can go ahead and do that. And so then, you know, beyond the images that you're seeing here, that would be kind of like searching through that collection.
Family search, you can look at maybe 50 at a time.
I see. Yeah. So you're asking, is there another way to arrange the view?
Yes, yes.
You know what, to be honest, I'm not sure.
In order to jump ahead.
Yeah, I think in the way that they have this set up, I think that you're just sort of paging through. I think the way that you would kind of jump ahead is that you would have to search for another person. Yeah, I don't think that there is another view of the resource.
Okay, I'm just referencing it to Family Search. They might have multiple books on one strip. And so you can look at all of the thumbs at the same time, be able to see where one book starts and one book stops in order to jump ahead further.
Yeah, I guess I would have to play around with it a little bit and see if there is another way, but I guess in terms of the buttons that they're giving us here, I'm not seeing. I mean, you can use the page thing to jump to another part in the book.
Okay, that's fine. I'll play around with it too.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah.
Okay, we have another one. This is from Chris. He says, I'm from the UK and I noticed that you have access to the UK census. Are there any more ways to access UK records?
Yeah, there are. So let's see, we'll go back to the home page here and begin searching. So yes, so if you wanted to see the records for another country, so I'm going to go to Europe, and then let's see. So we've got, it looks like they've broken the UK up into England and Wales and Scotland and whatnot. So you can click on England, for instance, then, and see the list of collections that they've got. So there's lots and lots of records for England and Wales anyway. And then you can also, these results from these records will show up in your search results when you're searching for a person.
Okay, and that kind of segues into Happy Face's question, how to research records in Switzerland, which are in German. So is there a translation service?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, if they're in another language, they're just in another language.
Yeah.
You know, you can use, you know, like Google Translate and things like that. But yeah, Ancestry doesn't just translate everything for you, unfortunately.
Okay, that's it for now.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to move on then to the next resource. So I'm going to go back to our genealogy and local history page. The next resource we're going to look at here is Fold 3. And this is one of those resources that is made available by the state library. Fold 3 has a little bit of a quirk. So because I've clicked on this, I clicked on this before our session started, it didn't do it, but sometimes when you click on the link for the first time, it'll say this Fold 3 session has expired or something like that. The workaround that I have found is just to hit the back button and click on Fold 3 again, and then it's fine. So I don't know why it does that. It does that from the state library's site also. So I don't know. Fold 3 is also created by the folks who made Ancestry, and it is a resource that really is focused on military records. So if you're researching someone who might have a military background, this is a good resource to take a look at. So there are some different ways to search Fold 3. So you can see on the front page here, there are, so the United States, of course, is the bulk of the records, but there are some records from a handful of other countries. You can search by conflict specifically. There are also some non-military records. So there are a couple of collections that are focusing on African American and Native American resources. And then there is this non-military collection. I honestly have no idea what the organizing logic is for the non-military collections. It's just this sort of random assortment of things, but it's really interesting. If you ever, if you're just sort of going down this rabbit hole, it's worth spending some time in there. There's like when constitutional amendments were ratified, there's a collection of letters from each state, like acknowledging the ratification of these amendments. I don't know, just lots of interesting sort of random tidbits from American history. But yes, the bulk of it is military records. So you can either look by conflict, or you can just kind of put in a name or a date and just kind of plunge in and see what happens. So I'm going to put in a name. I'm going to Rita McClure. And let's see. So you can see on the side, there are filters here. So you can further refine your results by conflict, by place, by type of publication, multiple different ways that you can refine your search results. And then this first result, I'm pretty sure is for the guy that I'm looking for. And this is a World War I draft registration card. If you're familiar with Liberty Memorial Central Middle School here in Lawrence, you may know that it was built as a World War I memorial for soldiers from Lawrence who were killed in World War I. Heritagequest McClure is one of the soldiers whose name is memorialized in the auditorium at Central. So this is his draft card. It looks like he was from Hutchinson, Kansas originally. It gives you some information about occupation, appearance. So like on the second page here, there's information about his eye color, how tall he was, things like that. So I don't know, these draft cards I find to be particularly moving, I think, because they do give you a little bit of that sort of, I don't know, just human connection, I think, to folks. Again, as with Ancestry, if you find something that you that pertains to your person and you want to keep a hold of it, you can save it. In this case, you're going to go to the little toolkit up here in the upper right corner, and you can either download it or print it. You can share it, so emailing it. If you are on Ancestry, you can save it to your Ancestry account. So there's several different ways that you can save a resource or share it with others. Are there questions about Fold 3?
Anybody? Okay, I don't. Oh, yeah. Chris has. So go ahead, Chris.
At the bottom of one of the pages you showed, it gave an explanation of what Fold 3 was, but I couldn't read it all. Could you go back to that and explain it?
Sure. So Fold 3, I'm assuming, was it on
the bottom of the first page?
On the front page, okay.
Yeah, of the Fold 3 itself.
Thank you.
There you go. Down here.
About the flag folding.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, good.
I was wondering about the limits of the records as far as how far forward they go, because I know that a lot of them, like the census, stops at 1940 and that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, so it looks like the most recent conflict that they're highlighting is the Vietnam War. I have found, because folks can also add memorials here, like this person served in the Iraq War, so you may find some sort of crowdsourced information that's coming from more recent conflicts. But the records that are hosted in Fold 3, I believe the most recent are from Vietnam.
I will add, I looked up the different tiers of like what it costs to get a Ancestry membership, and the very most deluxe version, which is fairly expensive, it's like $50 or $60 a month. The addition, the sort of the difference is that it has Fold 3 and newspapers.com, both of which you can get through the library website. So if you decide to get a membership, don't go for the high one because you can get these free. You can save a little money, but I thought that was interesting. So these are highly regarded resources and you can get them free with your library card.
I was wondering, can Fold 3 be accessed from home, or does that also have to be accessed from the library?
Yeah, Fold 3, because it's provided by the state library, all of their resources you can access from home. So this would be an example of one of those resources that if you were having trouble logging in, you could give us a call and we can give you one of those state library e-cards and you should be able to log in that way. Any other Fold 3 questions?
Guess not.
Nope. All right. The next resource I wanted to share with you is Heritagequest. Heritagequest is also made by the folks who make Ancestry. This is a resource that, that you should be able to use from home. Heritagequest does have a fair amount of overlap with Ancestry. At whatever point our remote access to Ancestry does actually dry up, this is probably the resource I would suggest folks go to for their sort of Ancestry related needs until they can make it into the library. The main one of those resources that is an overlap are the US Census Records, which are also here in Heritagequest. The big difference between Ancestry and Heritagequest, other than, Ancestry just has, a larger breadth of records, is that Heritagequest doesn't allow you to search across lots of different record types with one search the way Ancestry does. So you just sort of have to choose what you want to look at, what type of record you want to look at. They again have the begin searching button, but when you click on that, it just takes you to another page where you still have to decide what type of record you want to look at first. So for instance, the census records, I'm going to go ahead and look at the 1920 census. And there you can see that there is some similarity between the interface here and that you would find in Ancestry. One of the differences here, though, is that in addition to making it really easy to search for a specific person, Heritagequest also makes it easier to look at a resource in general. So if you wanted to look at, the 1920 census in Kansas, you could go ahead and just kind of drill down to whatever place you want to look at. And so I'm going to choose Lawrence here. And then it lets me drill all the way down to the district that I want to look at. And then it just takes you to the resource in general. So if you just wanted to take a look at the census record, you could do that without having to be searching for a specific person. So I think that is one of the, depending on what kind of research you're doing and kind of how you're approaching it, this can be, I think, a strength of Heritagequest, that it's not sort of focused around an individual that you're researching, but you can also look at the resource. but you can also search for a person. I am going to do a search for Carrie, whoops, Carrie Watson. And again, you'll see it starts to autofill. I could put in a lot more detail if I wanted to here, but I'm not going to. I'm going to just go ahead and search. And then you can see it brings up some details about different possible hits. Again, as with Ancestry, it's got these little sliders that allow you to refine how broad or exact you want your search to be. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this first one. And you'll see it provides a transcription of the record. So you can kind of get a sense of what you're looking at, and then it takes you to an image of the record itself. It's kind of hard to see because it starts out so tiny, but as you zoom in, you can see that one of the results is sort of highlighted in yellow, and that is your search result. And as you hover over it, it will give you a transcription. So, you know, just like today, the census takers had a wide spectrum of handwriting styles. This is Carrie Watson is the librarian for whom the Watson Library at KU is named. And it looks like in 1920 here, she was the head of her own household. She was 61 years old. She was born in New York. Her parents were born in Connecticut and New York. She was a librarian at the university. And then it also looks like she had a boarder living in her house, Mary Smeltzer, who was also a librarian at the university. And you can see on the side here, there's information about the addresses. And then this is also, census records are such a great opportunity to get a glimpse at the folks in the neighborhood, you know, so the people who live around the person that you're looking for. And quite often, you know, a lot of times, especially in the past, families, you know, lived close together. So you might be looking for one person. And then if you kind of look before or after a little ways in the census records, you might come across other names that you recognize. So this can be really helpful, being able to sort of page forward and backward in these census records around a person that you're searching for, can be a really useful way of finding information about other people that maybe you didn't even realize that you should be looking for, but are nearby. Again, if you find a record that you're interested in, you can use the save button to either email it to yourself or to save it to your computer. Are there any questions about Heritagequest?
I'm not sure this is about heritage, but can you say anything about immigration records and where they could be found?
So I would probably go back to Ancestry for that. Ancestry has a whole wealth of passenger lists and naturalization records and all kinds of resources related to immigration. Another resource to think about are, and I'm not really going to delve into this too much here really at all, but the National Archives are also a resource for researching immigration. So folks who went through the naturalization process, their records would often be held by the National Archives, depending on kind of the district that they went through to go through that naturalization process. Does that, I don't know, does that answer the question at all?
John, that was your question. I guess so. Okay. And we will review this. Happy Face, we will kind of at the end go back and retrace our steps a little bit about how you get to these resources on the web. Now, the most recent census I've seen so far is 1940. Chris wants to know if there are any more recent than that.
Oh, yes. So this is exciting. So each census, there is an embargo of 72 years on each census for privacy reasons. But one of the exciting things about 2022 is it is 72 years from the 1950 census, and the 1950 census is expected to be released on April 1st, 2022. So hopefully not a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, that embargo number. Why 72 years, I wonder? Where did that come from?
I think it's just, that I think life expectancy maybe, just that most folks would either have passed away or just definitely that's not not their information anymore.
Yeah.
What does April 1st mean for us? When will we be able to access?
That is when they're supposed to release it to the world. So I think
Ancestry will receive it.
I would imagine so. And then so if you look at our genealogy and local history page, when they released the 1940 census, the Census Bureau put out, they released the 1940 census in a searchable form. So definitely, I think that's what they're anticipating, that on April 1st of this year, that they would release it in this fashion. And I'm sure Ancestry has worked out some sort of mechanism with the census folks to bring that over into their databases too. Yeah, very exciting.
Melissa, since you were just on the resources page, could you backtrack? We have someone who got here a little late and missed the journey to the resources page. So if you could go back to the home page,
sure thing.
and then start there, and we'll show you here's how to get to the resources we're talking about.
So if you start at our homepage, which is lplks.org, and you go to resources and then genealogy and local history, then that will take you to the kind of roundup of things that we subscribe to, or the State Library of Kansas makes available to us, or are just kind of things out on the web that we think are useful.
Okay, and if you could just so far go down the list of the sites you've already spoken of and tell us which ones that you can access from home right now.
Okay, so the first one we talked about was Ancestry Library Edition. This one, they technically turned off remote access on December 31st, but I checked it today and I was still able to access it from offsite. So hurry if you would like to use it from home before that closes off for real. The second resource that we looked at was Fold 3. Fold 3 is made available by the state library. So if you have a Kansas IP address, which if you live in Kansas, you should be able to just log into it from home. If you have trouble, you can give us a call at the library and we can give you a state library e-card, which will allow you to have access. Heritage.
Excuse me, just on that one. Denise has an old paper state library card. Can you believe it? Paper. She wonders if that would work.
Well, if you've continued to renew that number, it probably will. It's the number that's on the card that is what they care about. So it's a 6-digit number that is your card number. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, Denise. I have paper cards too, for the record. I was just joking around.
Yes. And then Heritagequest is the third resource that we talked about, and that one is also provided by the state library, and you should be able to access it from home.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I had just a couple more things that I wanted to touch on. So newspapers. There are a few different resources that we have available, but I was just going to kind of touch on a couple of them. One of them is the Kansas Digital Newspapers Program, which is a partnership between the Kansas State Historical Society and newspapers.com. So this is that newspapers.com access that Kathleen was mentioning. So the full collection is available to Kansas residents. You have to have a Kansas driver's license or Kansas ID to log into the full collection. But there is also an open access collection that's available to everyone. And at this point, honestly, I don't know that there is a ton of difference between what is in those two collections because it's been around for long enough. So this is a project that digitized all Kansas newspapers that were in the public domain. So that would be all Kansas newspapers that were published before 1923. So this is a fantastic resource for kind of territorial Kansas, early history of Kansas. You can search in a couple of different ways. You can either just start with a keyword, you can put in a date, you can add a location. So if I'm wanting to look at Lawrence, I can go ahead and do Lawrence, and I want to look for the library. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it will bring up search results that hit my, my search terms. You can use the little slider to refine your date range. There's a bunch more filters for time frame, or if you're wanting to look for a specific paper. So you can see there's a whole list of Lawrence papers if I wanted to just look for a specific paper. And then if you find something that you want to take a look at, you can click on it and it will show you your search term highlighted. You can click up through all of your search terms up here, all of the matches for your search term if you want. If you find something that you want to keep, you have a couple of options. If you go the clip route, it will ask you to create a free account. So you're welcome to do that if you would like to do that and have kind of a digital clippings file. If you're not interested in that, you can go the print save route, and it will let you save either the full page or you can select a portion, and then you kind of draw a little box around what you want. And you can print it, or if you save it, you can save it either as a JPEG or as a PDF. So if you're wanting to print it, you'd probably do a PDF. If you're wanting to post it online somewhere, you'd probably do a JPEG. So super, super user-friendly. Digital newspapers are such a goldmine for every kind of historical research, including genealogy research. A lot of these early papers were super chatty. They had kind of the rundown of people's social doings. So you can do a keyword search. You can put in a person's name or put in an address, and you'll find search results coming up that, in the old days when you were using microfilm, you kind of had to either have a target date or you had to just be committed to combing through for that needle in a haystack. With the keyword searchability, you can come up with things that, that you would never have found otherwise. I like to use the example of, I own an old house in East Lawrence, and I research it off and on every now and again. And I put in my address, and I came across a notice that someone who lived in my house had passed away. And so it was, kind of an obituary for this person. And it said that there was going to be a wake in the house. And then there was another search result that came up a couple of days later, and it was talking about how someone who had sat up with the body had been arrested because they stole the shoes off the corpse.
Oh man.
Yeah. And, that is such a fascinating detail about the history of my house that I would never have known about because there was no date that I was looking for. It just came up when I put in my address as a search term. So such a great resource for finding things that you never would have been able to find before. Are there any questions about the Kansas Digital Newspapers program?
Well, I have one that's sort of a general question, and if you think of any, just send them in the chat or open up your mics, guys, but Shelley wanted to know, and this happened to me, I think, when I was searching some records for my grandmother, birth certificate or something, that the name was misspelled. And I mean, obviously, when you're looking at microfilm of newspapers, there's nothing you can do about that. But is there a way, or is there anything you can do if you happen across one of these birth records or death records and the information is wrong? It's been transcribed incorrectly.
You know, so often you can, usually it's in the footer somewhere, there will be some sort of contact information for exactly that kind of thing. So if you think something is incorrect or you notice that the transcription is wrong, there's usually a way that you can submit that information.
Okay. So it's sort of specific to each site that you're on, each service that you're on.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Anybody else?
I did notice on that Carrie Watson, it showed Carrie, Cassie, and Corey, I think. There was 3 different names that were listed. So somebody had apparently had made a change or requested there be a change.
I noticed that too. I think it was spelled with an O, like Corey. But yeah, I think that's exactly what happens. People,
right, which is probably just in the way the person wrote the A, you know, you just couldn't see the little, that's, anything could happen like that.
Yeah.
What about newspapers from other states, such as New York?
So that is the next resource. Let's see here. So the next thing that I wanted to share with you is Newspaper Archive. And this is a resource that the library subscribes to on your behalf. So you can access this from home, but you'll have to have your library card number and your PIN to access this from home. Newspaper Archive is like newspapers.com. They're digitized newspapers, they're keyword searchable. We chose this specific, we chose Newspaper Archive to subscribe to because it has the Lawrence Journal World in its entirety. So up to current content, not the last, there's like a 3-month embargo on the newest content, but it's complete essentially going all the way back. But there are also papers from all over the United States and even other countries. So you can browse by location. You can also search by date or by a specific publication. But when you browse by location, you can choose a state. So if you're wanting to see, for New York, for instance, if you're wanting to see what communities are represented, this is a list of all the cities that they have a paper for. And then when you click on the city, then it will give you the list of the papers that they have. And not every they don't have every paper, and every paper that they have isn't a complete run like they have for the Journal World. Sometimes there are small date ranges for some of the papers, but it does give us like quite a broad geographic coverage for our newspaper collection.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And Newspaper Archive has, like with the Journal World, it has content that is, much more recent. So, so quite a lot of the papers will have content that is, from the 90s or, the 2000s, which actually, when you're doing research in digital resources, sometimes finding the more recent content is a lot harder than finding the more historic content. So let's see. So I'm going to just, I guess, choose Spruce. I don't know, Spruce, New York. Looks like the United States Journal is the paper that they have there. And then it kind of prompts you to either put in a name or you can enter a keyword. I'm going to just go with library. And kind of similar to the newspapers.com, it will give you a date, the title of the paper, and then a little snippet with your search terms coming up. You can sort your search terms depending on, what factors you care about. You can also dial in the date range. If you searched for a community that has multiple papers, here in the filters, you could choose a specific paper if you only wanted to look at one or two. And then if you want to take a look at your search result there, it again highlights your search term, and you can kind of click through those. And as with newspapers.com, you can here they call it cropping. So you can draw a little box around the thing that you want to keep. They make you kind of walk through these steps. So it's sort of like they're crowdsourcing descriptions of the papers by having people describe their clippings. I think that's kind of what they're doing. But so you can just say library, and then it requires you to tag a clip with a category. You don't have to create a clippings folder, but you can. So some of these things will let you go through the process without completing all of them, and then you can clip it. And then it also tells you that you can create a free account if you want to save your clippings in sort of like a digital clippings box. You don't have to, and then you can download the clipping that you made as either a PDF or a PNG. Yeah. Another, I think, really fun resource for digging into genealogy, especially because I think one thing to think about when you're using newspapers is the idea that news traveled to other places, and so you might want to look at papers that aren't just in your local area. So, you know, sometimes, especially if there was something really newsworthy, you might find reports coming up in newspapers in other areas. So this kind of coverage allows you to get outside of just kind of the local area for the coverage that you're seeing, and see, you know, if there was reporting happening more widely beyond your local community. Is there, I don't know, are there any questions?
We have one question. How far back do they go? We're looking at 1857 here.
Yeah.
Do you know how
Well,
old they get?
So I know that in Kansas anyway, you know, the oldest papers are in the 1854. I'm not sure for parts of the country that would have longer, I guess, settled history. I'm not sure actually what the oldest content is, but I could imagine that for New York, for instance, there could be papers from the 1700s in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is so cool. All of these tools are just
Amazing.
the coolest.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there.
There really is.
Yeah. So I know we're kind of at our time boundary here. I did want to mention that I'm always happy to do research appointments with folks. So if there is a resource here that you would like to get more help with, or if you have a question that you are researching and you'd like, you know, assistance kind of figuring out how to tackle it, I am always happy to set up time to meet with people for those kinds of questions. I think Kathleen should have my contact information if you want to get connected with me.
And are you doing those on Zoom, Melissa?
I'm happy to do that, you know, in person or by Zoom, whatever.
Just until we get through this surge.
Yeah.
Can I ask a really quick question?
Sure. Maggie?
How do I access Ellis Island? I think a few of my ancestors that went through Ellis Island. I'd like to find out more about it. How do I do that?
Oh, that's a good question. There's actually a website specifically for Ellis Island. So you could Google that. It's managed by the National Park Service. But there are also in Ancestry and some of those immigration records, there are, passenger lists and things like that of, ships that came in and all of the various sort of ports of entry, including Ellis Island. Did you, I guess, do you have a specific question that you're trying to answer, or just trying to figure out?
Yeah, when a specific ship, the Essex, came into the United States with my ancestors on it.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I could just go to ellisisland.com and.
Well, I'm looking now at, there's this, Heritage, were we just talking about My Heritage?
Uh-uh.
What was the Heritage site?
Oh, Heritagequest.
Oh, Heritagequest. Okay, no, this is myheritage.com. And then there's one called heritage.statueofliberty.org. Now, I'm not sure those are free. There's a bunch of listings, Maggie, when you just Google Ellis Island records.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, here, passenger arrival list, National Archives. So it's archives.gov.
Oh, thank you.
Archives.gov. By
Thank
ship.
you.
Yeah.
Melissa, are you familiar with WikiTree?
Not so much. No.
Malika, do you want to tell us about WikiTree?
Sure. WikiTree is it's an online site. You can make an account and you can start to put in the information for your own family tree. And there is one tree being worked on by everybody. That's where the wiki part comes from. And so if you put in information for an ancestor and they already seem to be in the tree, you'll find out about it and you'll say, do you think this is the same person? And you can decide. And once you get a lot of your ancestors in there and they go kind of far back, you start really plugging into what other people have built into the tree. And suddenly, many generations back, and you find like, wow, this person was one of my ancestors, many generations back. It's really, really cool. And lots of very serious genealogists are working on this thing all the time. And they have regular sort of events where people work on things together. And they are very, very careful about everything being very accurate, everything being documented, because they don't want to have a big mess of a tree. They want a really accurate tree. So whereas in Ancestry, everybody's kind of building their own separate tree, there's a lot of duplications of efforts and everything. But with the WikiTree, it's really wonderful. It's so helpful. And
it's accessible to everyone for free?
Free.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Check it out.
Yeah, I know Family Search has a kind of a similar situation. Family Search is another resource that you can log into for free. You do have to create an account for it, but it kind of, when you start building your tree, when you search for someone, it brings up if there is a result that someone else has already entered this person, it kind of does the same thing. But that's really fascinating, having just sort of one big tree like that everyone's working on. I love that.
Yeah. You don't have to
search also.
just look.
Family Search is also the same idea that it's a world tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that concept.
Yeah,
Well, it is after 5, so I didn't want to keep Melissa any longer because she's got to go home to that house. Do you ever find any strange shoes in the back of those old closets of yours or anything like that?
No, we did find in one of the ducts, we found sort of a little cache of like old magazines and photographs and things. So we have found a few sort of random things. And then of course there are like, I don't know, corn cobs and things that we figure squirrels probably dropped in the walls and stuff, but yeah, there's always something.
That's one of the first things I'm going to do is search my address and see what happened here.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
It's a wild
Okay,
parties.
well, I hope I got to everybody's questions. I think I did. Melissa, let's give her a great round of applause. Thank you so much. This was just
Thank you.
a lot of really great information. I can't wait to dig in. And I'm going to probably wait a couple of weeks to let everybody else dig in, and then we'll send out a feeler and see how many people want to get on and talk about what you're finding as you start researching your tree. So expect that in a couple of weeks. We'll set something up, see who shows up. Okay. All right.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Melissa. Appreciate it.